Welcome to The Scoop. I'm Diego Cordovez with Adam Schoenfeld, and our special guest today is Bill Chen.
Hi.
Last year, Bill won the No Limit shorthanded and a limit hold'em bracelet, 2 bracelets in the span of about a week or two. Thanks for joining us today.
4 other caches as well.
You're welcome.
You know, one of the big insults in poker is calling someone a donk or a live one, but maybe the worst one is calling someone a math guy. As long as I've been playing, you know, if you really want to just kind of minimize anyone's accomplishments, they'll say,
right,
that guy's just a math guy. And I don't consider that an insult, and I'm going to say you're the ultimate math guy. You've got a PhD in math. You wrote the book called The Mathematics of Poker. What's one of the big misunderstandings about the term math guy or how math is used in poker?
Well, a lot of people think that playing, quote, mathematically correct means like playing in a predictable way, you know, but that playing in a very tight, very predictable way, and people think, well, you can't play poker like that because people know what you have by the way you're betting all the time. And that's true if you play that way. I mean, I think that image was gotten from Skalansky's book, you know, Hold'em for Advanced Players. And that's actually the way you're supposed to play in a full ring limit game. But mathematically correct play usually means like mixing up your play, playing very loose, very aggressively at times.
Wouldn't in more advanced math, game theory,
right,
you're playing in a way that's totally unpredictable because you're leaving people with decisions where they have literally no idea which way to go.
Right. You try to balance your play and all that. I think it's sort of like, you know, Wall Street was in the 70s, right? There are these options traders. There are these traders who just made lots of money, and, you know, they're like, oh, yeah, there are these math guys coming up. But, I mean, now you really have to incorporate... Right. You really have to incorporate the mathematics into your trading, otherwise you're sort of out of it.
Let me fire a question at you just to test. 7 times 6.
42 or something.
See, that's what I mean.
Morning.
He's got it locked up.
I think one funny thing is I think people think there's a big contradiction between using math versus having a feel for the game or reading players. You know, whenever guys say, well, this guy's a math guy, they're implying he can't really read a player.
Right.
I mean, how does math or some of the concepts that you talk about in your book, how does that work into reading a player or making a decision based on another player's play?
Well, we talked about that in the book. I think like there are sort of 2 parts in poker. One of them is like gathering the information. This is based on your reads and based on how he plays. You know, you put him on this sort of distribution of hands. But like you have to make the right decision even after you do that. Like you know, you go, well, okay, he's got aces, kings, queens, or ace king. I can beat ace king and queens, you know, and try to figure it out from there. But so you still have to figure out the right play even with the information. So like using your read and your table feel, all that is like fair game for like trying to predict what hand they have. But once you know like what hand or what range of hands they have, you still have to make the right play. And that's where the mathematics comes in.
You need to know what the right play is.
Right.
The funny thing, I remember a few years ago a good quote from Chris Ferguson where he said people who say math isn't applicable to poker are using the wrong math, or I'm paraphrasing, but
I know the phrase. He says people who think the math doesn't apply here don't know the right math.
I think 90% of people, at least when I talk to them, they think that when you say math that you mean having like really advanced arithmetic, you know, because they'll say something like, well, you math guys, sure, you know the numbers and stuff. I don't know the exact percentage of making a flush draw, but I know it's about a third of the time, you know, after the flop. And it's like, yeah, it's not knowing that it's, you know, whatever, 34.726%. It's using game theory. It's using, you know, some of the stuff you cover in your book, which I don't even know the names of it. It's very advanced.
No, it is game theory. I mean, there are sort of 2 approaches. There's what we call the game theory approach, which is optimal play, which is actually playing in a way that your opponent can't beat you. Like he's just going to give up equity to you.
Right.
But there's also
no matter what he does, he's making a mistake.
Right. Well, he could also play perfectly, but you know he probably won't. Then there's exploited play, which is incorporating reads and tells into your play, and It's a lot of it isn't even like physical tells. Like for example, online, you have like in some ways much less information because you're not at the table. You don't get to see how they're betting and everything. But in some ways, you have much more information because you have this database of how they've played the last like 100 hands or 1,000 hands against you. So
and you have it running while you're playing.
Right. So I mean, I think both types of games you have to incorporate that type of information into your decision making.
Is poker solvable?
It's interesting to ask like what that really means. I mean, heads up.
I don't know what it means.
Right, heads up game theoretically, yes, there is a solution. In Hold'em's a very complex game, so it's actually hard to come up with a solution. I mean, there's a solution. I don't know if like we'll be able to find the exact solution in a few years or not. But if it's multi-way, there's an interesting question about what the solution is because there are these. I'm not going to say collusion, but implicit alliance possibilities. I'll give an example. Suppose you're playing three-handed limit hold'em, and the question is, okay, the button raises. How should the small blind play? Well, there are kind of two ways the small blind can play. The small blind can either three bet or fold all the time, and basically kicks out the big blind. So basically, the button and small blind are in an alliance together because the big blind's going to have to fold a lot there, and they're going to be playing hand heads up.
They're turning the big blind's money to dead money.
Right.
Consistently.
Right. Or the small blind can call, encourage your big blind to call, and then the small blind, big blind have an alliance against a button, and this may discourage the button from raising. I mean, if I'm the button and I know I'm going to get heads up with the small blind because he's going to be a really aggressive three-better, he's going to three-bet a lot, we're going to get heads up, he's not going to have that great a hand.
And he's got position, and then you start four-betting him every time.
Right.
I read on the internet, by the way, that you've solved poker. Someone was claiming this, and they said that you said you've solved poker. I just thought you'd like to know that.
These wild. I wish it were true.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you just play on autopilot.
I know you've done well, but you'd be doing much better, I imagine, if you had solved it.
Right. No, I haven't solved poker. In fact, that's why it's challenging and
it's still fun.
Yeah, it's still a fun and exciting game.
The good news is that even though you've put a lot of your thoughts into this book, The Mathematics of Poker, I bought it pretty much when it came out, and even though I've got a master's in engineering, I'm actually reapplying to grad school to get a PhD so that I can understand it. Because past the foreword, I was already rereading every paragraph trying to understand it. No, I mean, I think it's distilled down into some key concepts, but all of the background that goes into it and all the explanations really are highly complex. I mean,
well, that's the thing.
At least for me,
right? It's sort of in two parts. If you read each chapter and remember like the key points, like the concepts. For example, you don't have to know how to derive in the raising game that you should raise with about 42% of your hands, which is the square root of 2 minus 1. But this is a question that both Caro and Slansky have asked. A guy bets at the end, and the pot's so big, he's probably not going to fold. Like, what percentage of his hands do you raise? Well, if you raise a hand with a hand that beats half of his hands, that's not good enough because you can re-raise.
Right.
So you need to be a little tighter. But so if a hand beats 2/3 of his hands, then you can clearly withstand a re-raise. But so it's somewhere in between, and we sort of solved that problem. The idea is to understand the concept of why it's between a third and a half, and like the answer is actually 41.4%. But you don't really need to know the derivation of that.
And then if you go on tilt and you do it like 80% of the time, what happens then?
Well, then the other guy can be exploitive and re-raise a lot looser, right?
I'm going to buy the book, but I'm not going to read it. I think that'll be beneficial
You just
to
bring
me.
it to the table to try and intimidate the other guys.
Yeah. That's another angle.
I mean, they'll just say, well, you're a math guy. He doesn't know what he's doing.
I think the funny thing, I mean, not to harp on the whole math guy concept, is that I think a lot of people would grant that, as you said, in a full ring limit hold'em game, you can play in a pretty mechanical fashion, and if you're disciplined and you're really following certain rules, you're going to win.
Especially in a low or mid limit game,
sure.
I would say.
But you won the one bracelet in limit hold'em, you won the other in 6 hands at no limit,
right?
And most guys would say that's the real test where you can't wait for a hand. you've got to be very aggressive. You're playing a lot of heads-up pots, and
you have to be a psychologist.
So taking down that bracelet, either it just attests to being a great all-round player, or it attests to the fact that people misunderstand that math is really applicable to that environment too.
Yeah, I think shorthanded is one of my favorite forms of poker. So, I wish I had a shorthanded limit tournament, but
yeah,
the shorthanded no limit. See, no limit. Really played correctly is kind of boring on a full table because you got to fold a lot in the first three positions. So why don't we just cut to the chase and just play more hands, assume the first three guys fold and play six-handed. That's where the real skill comes in.
I mean, what are there particular concepts or particular areas of study that apply to the six-handed no limit that you used?
Yeah, because six-handed tends to get heads up a lot more pre-flop. I mean, no limit should get heads up a lot pre-flop anyway, even if it's a full game, but sometimes it's not played correctly. But since it gets heads up a lot pre-flop, a lot of the game theory concepts apply.
Right.
Like bet sizing and balancing your play. Like one of the things in no limit is if you're raising from early position, you can't be aces, kings, ace, king. I mean, that's what a lot of people say. But what if the flop comes 6-5-4? Then the guy who has 5-4 knows he has you beat because you have aces, kings, or ace, king.
Or the guy who has check 10 knows that you can't call when he moves in on you.
Right. So you have to mix in suited connectors, smaller pocket pairs, maybe not all the time. So it's not like you're playing looser because you're playing those hands. You're playing aces, kings, ace, king, and queens all the time, and you're playing those hands a mixed some mixed percentage
just the
of time.
optimal amount.
Yeah, right.
You mentioned how there had been a revolution in options trading, and you are in fact an options trader, or you work for an options trading firm.
I work for Susquehanna, who's not only, we trade in all financial markets. We did start off as an options trading firm in the 80s when I wasn't there. But yeah, we trade in all financial markets, and poker is a very important part of Susquehanna. In fact, the trading class is, a third of the class is playing poker. They play a mixed stud, Omaha, and Hold'em tournament, and they learn decision making from playing those games.
Are you promoted based on your poker accomplishments?
Well, no, not really.
But maybe higher based on your poker.
Maybe I am.
Right.
But the firm was founded by poker players. So yeah, Jeff Yass was a poker player in Vegas before he decided to start trading. So.
I remember a couple of years ago, this fellow Jay Sippelstein came, and of course he was a complete unknown, and he made it to final table against Eric Seidel and I think Johnny Chan, a bunch of big name guys, and won the bracelet. And that's the first time that I realized there was a lot of poker playing going on. He'd said that there were a lot of home games or after hours games going on. I can only imagine the amounts involved.
Well, no, actually, it's fairly low stakes. I think Jay still works for the firm. He lives in Australia now, so it's actually very hard for him to get here and play. But I think I basically took over his spot in the home game, and we just play 2-5 or 5-10 blinds. But it's a pretty tough game because everybody playing is a trader or a quant. And
if you need to, just dip into people's accounts that you're managing. And,
we never do that.
Yeah. All right, Bill. Thanks a lot for joining us, and it was very interesting just to get a different perspective than a lot of people in terms of how to approach the game.
Thanks.
Good luck to you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for joining us on The Scoop. Join us tomorrow with another guest.